Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me, and we're going to get started now. So first of all, thank you everyone for attending today. Appreciate some of you have sacrificed your lunch times to join us. This is actually going to be a first in a series of webinars that Trident will be running this year. We'll aim to be running at least one per month, and we're going to provide a mixture of teaching, new release overviews, and other interesting topics. We'll be making this recording available on our website afterwards, and if you miss anything and if you want to share it with colleagues, you'll be able to use it from our website. I'll just take a quick minute just to introduce myself. My name is James Wakefield. I'm the TM1 practice lead for Trident. I've been doing TM1 for about 14 years now, and over those 14 years I've seen a number of TM1 add-ons and tools come and go. I came across the old Applix consolidations module years ago and thought it was pretty cool without actually realizing who had built it. Then I became aware of the OLAP Objects web tool by KueBIT, Richmond and Associates and realized it was them that had developed the Applix consolidation module and these other cool TM1 add-ons. Working with Richard KueBIT and Mike Cowie at KueBIT Richmond, it was great that they were so helpful to partners and customers over the years. And some of you may know Mike Cowie from the TM1 forum, and I think it's fair to say Mike is one of the most respected TM1 people worldwide. Both Mike and Richard have a deep involvement still in these TM1 add-ons. Over time, KueBIT Richmond became acquired by QueBIT, and they are one of the largest IBM business analytic partners in America. QueBIT still have a strong development of their TM1 add-ons and numerous customers on them in America. We've partnered with QueBIT to offer these TM1 add-ons to the Australian marketplace. QueBIT has recently rebranded their TM1 add-ons to come under the framework umbrella, and today we're going to look mainly at the report work TM1 add-on, but hopefully touch on the others and do webinars around them at a later date. Today, Dominic from QueBIT is going to present report work and its value to any TM1 organization. I've seen Dominic present before, and I think you'll all be impressed by what he has to show and how easy it is. We'll be taking questions at the end of Dominic's presentation. You will note you'll be muted at the moment, but you can use the button to raise your hand, and Dominic and I will answer questions at the end. Or, if you prefer, you can write a question in the message area, and we can answer those too. So Dominic, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Okay, so my name is Dominic Sharp. I'm a consultant with QueBIT, and I work with primarily with our sales department, demoing our products as well as TM1 to our clients here in the United States. New York City, Broaden. So in advance of the inevitable I apologize for any sounds of sirens. It is New York City. That said, we will press on. So, as Jay mentioned, Trident is QueBIT's reseller for the Australia and New Zealand of our products. And what I'm going to show you today is our framework suite of products, specifically ReportWorks, but we're going to touch on a couple of others. So in our framework suite of products, we have actually 4 products currently on offer: ControlWork, WebWork, ReportWork, and BoostWork. Like I said, we're going to focus on ReportWork today, but you're going to see a little bit of WebWork and a little bit of BoostWork. We intend to have future webinars that will take you in a deeper dive in both of these products, as well as our ControlWork product that was mentioned by James. If you have any questions or want a view of these products in advance of those webinars, channel your questions through James, and I'm sure we can accommodate demonstrating those products to you directly. But ReportWork itself is being the focus. At its heart, ReportWork is a report bursting application. It allows you to take the data that you have built into your TM1 application, all of the analytics that you have embedded in your TM1 application, and now share it with important and needed stakeholders within your organization. It not only allows you to distribute and burst reports across your organization, it also allows you to distribute and notify members of your organization when key indicators require further analysis or further investigation. So I'm going to take you through the product itself today. I'm going to show you how it works, how you build a report and burst a report in ReportWorks, but I want to give you some ideas as to how you can also leverage it to really increase the quality of work that your people are able to do within your organization. And this is all intended to be done using the TM1 system that you already have in existence in your organization, already implemented, I should say. So your basic architecture, your basic structure is like this. It's very high level. You've got your TM1 server, you've got your TM1 users. They've all got the TM1 client on their computer, or maybe they're using the web client to access the data in TM1. They have built out and developed your planning, your reporting system as appropriate as needed for your organization. But the problem has always been other users in the organization who would benefit from accessing that data, but whom you find it very onerous to deliver that data to because they're not necessarily connected directly to TM1, or they may have a direct connection to TM1, but they're not familiar enough to know how to find the information that they need. But you as the TM1 users know what that information is and how and when they need it. So ReportWorks acts as a conduit between the two. It allows you to take that data and distribute it to them in a meaningful and intelligent manner. It can be distributed to them in an email with an attachment, by loading it to a file on your network, or even loading it to a SharePoint site where your end users can access it. And one thing important to keep in mind is that when we send these out, one of the features of ReportWorks is it's going to take out all the TM1 formulas as it sends it out to them, so that even if they don't have TM1 on their computer, they can still see the pertinent information. But like I said, it's more than just bursting reports. It's also notification and analytics. When you drill down to it, that's a capability you can also leverage out of ReportWorks. Now, prior to this, TM1 does come with a report bursting application out of the box, so to speak. I say this because it's really very rudimentary. It's not very flexible. It's still very manually intensive and requires that somebody has to manually generate and distribute those reports themselves. It doesn't do it automatically. If you want something more automated, what you will need to do is use a product like BI, Cognos BI Reporting. Cognos BI Reporting is a great product. The reports are typically built in IT, though. It's a bit more complicated than TM1 to build your reports out. The Analysis Studio does provide for some self-service, but if anybody's ever had an experience with it, it tends to be a set of boxes where you fill in the boxes according to what you think you need, and then the distribution will happen accordingly. But it's not very clear. Unless you're very familiar with the environment, you won't know what boxes to fill in. It does scale across the enterprise, so it does handle a large number of users. And BI handles security differently than TM1. Now, this is a concern because you do have to maintain 2 layers of security now. Whereas with TM1, you have your security already built into it. Finally, if you're using TM1 cubes as your source and to your BI environment, you have to be aware there are certain limitations. For example, you need to flatten your hierarchies. You may have to create additional dimensions. And at times, you may even find that you have to create a whole separate reporting cube that works in the BI environment. So what we propose with ReportWorks is eliminating this extra step, these extra layers of work to get this level of dynamic report bursting. So types of reports from Excel, you don't need BI. It is heavily formatted, but at the same time, it's a formatting that pretty much all members of the organization, particularly on the business side, are familiar with. There's very few people in the modern organization today that isn't something of an Excel guru, particularly if you're working in the finance and accounting side of the organization, but really in any part of the organization. It is grid-oriented, but you do have the ability to create lots of calculations, not just within your rules within TM1, but also at the cell level. BI, on the other hand, it's an enterprise-scale product. It does allow you the ability to use relational databases as well as your TM1 cubes, and it does have dashboarding capabilities. The other thing, too, is it has the report distribution. These are a lot of good qualities, but if report distribution is your primary concern, that wouldn't necessarily mean that BI is the ideal way to go about setting up this structure. So, again, ReportWorks presents us with an alternative. Now, things to keep in mind as we go through ReportWorks. Okay, so it leverages your existing TM1 Excel reports. By this I mean you currently have in your organization reports built out in Excel using TM1. You've already built them for the product that you had implemented previously. So you don't have to make any changes to those reports. Actually, those reports exactly as they sit on your server right now are perfectly fine and suited for loading through ReportWorks. There are no restrictions. It just has to be in Excel, connected to TM1. When you go to distribute reports, you actually have three options. You can distribute them to a location on the network. You can distribute them through a SharePoint site, your organizational SharePoint site, or you can send it through, and I say a tailored email. So you can actually create an email on the fly in ReportWorks at runtime that will specifically speak to the information you're about to pass on to the person for their review. When you deploy ReportWorks, the attachments that you can send out, the file you're sending out, are always going to be, they will generally be in an Excel and a PDF format. You're going to leverage parameters that will drive your report. Now, what this means is when you're going to generate these reports, the assumption is that you have an existing report, for example, an income statement or a balance sheet, and you want to distribute the income statement or balance sheet to your department heads so that they can see how they're doing operationally, period over period. Well, so you can identify those departments in many different ways, and you can identify other parameters on that report in many different ways. So when you speak of parameters, that's what we're talking about. There can be a static value that you always want embedded. You can use an MDX statement to drive the list of elements, for example, or a list of departments that would be used. Or you can use a TM1 subset, which is my personal favorite way of doing it, because that subset, as long as it's public, can be dynamic or static. So at runtime, the list can regenerate. No one has to necessarily go in and rebuild the distribution list each period over period, each iteration. It can actually be rebuilt at runtime to the specific needs of that point in time. Now, ReportWorks does use active forms, so you can reports that have active forms embedded in them will run at runtime. But in addition to that, it allows you to use our BoostWorks solution, which also has similar functionality to active forms in allowing you to generate dynamic rows and collapsing rows according to the needs of that report at that point in time. In addition, you'll notice that I'm going to show you throughout the demo, we will allude to, and I will show you a brief example. BoostWorks also allows you to generate dynamic columns as well. So the entire structure of the report can change depending on the need at the point in time. You can schedule your reports to occur using a chore within TM1, or you could even have the reports trigger automatically or on demand by end users who don't even necessarily have to have the TM1 Perspectives client on the computer. So you're going to see an example in the demo today of me triggering a report to burst through a web interface. So you don't necessarily have to have the building client on your system to be able to trigger a report. Final point, and we will get to this towards the end of the demo, is the set of features that control ReportWorks are all built into objects that sit in TM1 itself. The implications of this, in my opinion, are great, because what this means is any one of the folks in the audience who have familiarity with the TM1 environment, particularly with the Turbo Integrator processes and how you can use Turbo Integrator to manage the data in your cubes, can leverage that knowledge now to make your report generation truly dynamic, meaning you don't necessarily have to fill in all the boxes at runtime. You can have your TI process do it intelligently for you. And I'm going to show you an example of this so it'll be clear at the end. But the point is that the objects that run ReportWorks actually sit in your TM1 application. So they're also backed up every night when you back up your TM1 data sets. Some of the concepts that we're going to be talking about today in the demo, these are, so I'm just going to bring these up now so that you understand what I mean. So I've already mentioned parameters. Parameters can be static, subsets, or an MDX statement. Parameters, you can have multiple parameters associated with a report. And when I say a report, I mean an Excel workbook where I've cherry-picked or selected specific sheets within that report, within that workbook that I want to use. So within that report, I can also have multiple parameters driving that report on those selected sheets. Books are made up of one report, or multiple reports. So you can now start to see we're starting to get some permutations developing here. You can have multiple parameters set to any one worksheet. You can have multiple worksheets set to any one report, and you can have multiple reports embedded in any one book. The possibilities are growing rapidly. Finally, your report, so your books will then be attached to a job, and the job is actually the step in ReportWorks where we're going to tell it, I want this to go in the form of an email that's going to have the following body to it, to the following list of recipients, or I want this book to go to my, to be labeled as following and loaded up to my SharePoint site. So these 5 steps will essentially be the steps you would go through to develop and deploy and burst a report across your organization, one that's sourced off the latest data in your TM1 system. So without further ado, let's get into the demo. So what you see here before you is my Excel screen. And by the way, this is all running on my personal laptop. And of course, I have my TM1 instance available to me. I have a framework instance in here as well. We'll probably not be going into here today, but this is for future webinars. We will definitely be talking. This is where our BoostWorks and our WebWorks are certainly ran from here. But the ReportWork ribbon is something else that we will also add on. And remember, something else I want to bring up. At no point do you require purchasing the rest of our framework suite for any one of our framework suite to work. So each application that we sell in frameworks actually can stand on its own with the existing IBM offering in your TM1 application. But essentially from within ReportWork, there's my ribbon, and you can see there's my parameters, my reports, my books, jobs, and my run jobs. Let me go ahead and open up my run jobs. And what you see here is a list of the jobs that I've already created. So I've already built the parameters, the reports, the books, and these are the jobs available to me. If I go to this first job, Distribute Monthly Financial, I'm going to move this over to the right. I'm going to hit Run Selected Job. Now you're going to see in the background what it's actually doing is it's running a report that's going to generate my income statement and my balance sheet. And you can see it's changing it across my entities. So in this particular case, my organization, we have offices all over the United States and all over the world. And what this job has done is it's now set up and published my income statement and balance sheet, and I think you may have seen it for my Minneapolis and my Chicago division. Now, where did those go? Well, in this particular case, this job has done 2 things. The first thing it's done is let's close this down. It's created this, my monthly financials by region report in a PDF format. I go ahead and double-click on that and open it up. What you see here is the report, the final product of the report, showing my January through March for my balance sheet for Minneapolis. Scroll down, and I have it for Chicago. And I keep going down. I also have my income statement for Minneapolis and then for Chicago. So a very simple job. Without actually going in, we'll go ahead and delete this out of here. Delete this out of here. Without going into the report at all, what drove the fact that I'm using Minneapolis and Chicago was the fact that I had selected those in a subset inside of my cube. So I'm going to go and modify that. Go into my server, into perspectives, and into my consolidations cube, and in my entities dimension, I have a public subset called Z region. Open it up. There you see I have Minneapolis and Chicago selected. So if I wanted to run this for another set of regions, all I need to do, go ahead and copy these. I'm going to go ahead and select. So I'm going to select Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Boston. And then I'm going to paste below that Minneapolis and Chicago. So now instead of having 2 elements, I'm going to have 5 elements ran in that report. So I'll go ahead and save that. And go OK. Now to this point, I haven't done anything in ReportWork. Incidentally, I do want to highlight this one point. If you look in here, the other thing that happened, so before I run this, was an email was also sent to me with the same report in it. We'll send another one right now. So this time, back to Run Jobs, select Distribute Monthly Financials. Move this over to the right so we can see what's happening. I'm going to run it again. Now, it's just saying that do I want to save that sheet before it actually runs it, and it's only because I'm running it on my computer right now. Typically, this application will run on the server itself. It wouldn't typically run on one of your end users' computers. It would run silently on the server. That way, there'd be no conflict with anyone else trying to work in TM1. So you wouldn't normally expect to see what's happening in the background because it would run silently on your server. I'm going to give this a couple seconds. Okay, it's almost finished. And remember, it's actually doing two jobs. It's creating the report, it's posting it to a PDF file on my network, and then it's also sending an email to me with the report attached. So if we go back in again to my reports folder, just imagine this is on my network. Oops. There's my monthly financials by region again. But let's take a look at the one that came out in the email. Back to my email. There's the new email that just came through for me. Open it up. So it's got, forgive my poor wording in this email, but it's got a little message telling them that I want them to take a look at the attachment, giving them my phone number to reach out to me if they have any questions. Let me open up the report and we'll see what we get. So now in Excel, I've opened up the attachment, and what you see is Boston, Philadelphia, Atlanta, keep going to the right, Minneapolis, and Chicago. And each is the balance sheet for each of those. If I click on any of the numbers in the balance sheet, or even on the subset, the subnums, what would be the subnums, you'll see that all of the TM1 functions have been taken out. So a non-TM1 user can open this up without any problem. The other thing you're going to notice, keep going to the right a little further, on my income statement, if I scroll down, it's my Boston income statement, I have down here my net income percent of sales. It's just a simple formula that I put into the report. The Excel formula remains intact. So this is a feature that you don't get out of the box feature in the TM1 report distribution, and I consider this very important. As someone who's worked with financial reports for a long time, there's nothing more frustrating than getting a report where everything has been cleared out, including all of the calculations. Sometimes you want to see how certain KPIs were calculated, and you want to see that in the body of the actual report you receive. So the Excel remains intact, but all the TM1 stuff has been removed. And again, it's also done my income statement for each of those regions. The whole process just took a matter of seconds. But I can tell you, if you wanted to do this, if somebody was actually doing this in the organization, creating these reports and then attaching them to the email, the entire process to complete it from beginning to end manually would probably take the better part of 15 to 20 minutes, with the possibility that they might get a bit bored and make a mistake and have to redo it again. So instead, they just hit run job, and it does it automatically. In this case, all they would have to do is update the subset, and it would run across the appropriate subset. So the jobs are ran very quickly and efficiently. As well, the fact is we also generated a PDF file on the fly that got loaded to the network simultaneously. So how does it do that? Well, I'm taking you through the steps, and we're going to build a report and a job, and I'm going to show you how I created a job for report bursting purposes. So there's a good reason why we set it up to be parameters, reports, books, jobs, and run jobs in this order, because generally this is the order in which you're going to set one up. Now, typically this client is only going to be needed on the computer of the people who will be developing the report work bursting jobs. It's not really needed for all of your end users. In fact, as I said, because TM1 is going to be removed from this, really most of the consumers of these reports may very well not even have TM1 on their computers at all. And indeed, you can have some users who have TM1 on their perspectives, but they may not necessarily need the report work client so that they can develop report work jobs. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to develop a report that's going to get distributed, and we want it to dynamically change the shape of the report depending on the account that gets called on. So let me first show you the report in question. So in this workbook, I have a workbook called my main reports. I have an income statement, I have a balance sheet, but I also have over here a GL detail report. What the GL detail report does is I have close to 8,000 vendors in my company, and I track expenses at the GL, in my GL at the vendor level. And so one of my key concerns in my organization is I want to track the vendor activity because that's a main part of our business. So with 8,000 vendors, I don't want to generate a report with 8,000 rows that goes out to all my managers on a regular basis or on an intermittent basis. So what I've done here is this is where you get a little flavor of BoostWorks. I've included the BoostWorks expansion capability. With BoostWorks, it's like active forms. You can expand rows, but you can also expand columns, and you can stack your expansions on rows and columns. So if I just do run expansion, what it's going to do is it's actually going to find for the software division for the New York department, for the account for Broaden, it'll give me a list of all vendor activity for the year. So you'll see here that I only have vendor activity through June of 2012 in this particular case. Something to keep in mind is because this is something you can't do in an active form. If I go in and change this to another account and I rerun my expansion, a couple of things change. One, the number of rows returns changed because I've zero suppressed the rows, and the number of columns have changed now. It only went through May. So this report is going to self-generate at runtime. But I want it to go out because I want my managers to see what the activities are so they can report back to me on any shifts in activity that we need to be aware of. So I'm going to close out of that report, and now we're going to set it up to be ran through report work. First step I'm going to do is I'm going to step into my parameters, and I'm going to add a parameter for the accounts that I wanted to scroll across. Now you can see I already have some parameters in here. I'll go ahead and hit add. I'm going to put in vendor accounts. So I create a parameter. Select it. So my choices are I can use a static value in this parameter, or I can choose a subset, or I can actually enter an MDX statement if I want to have a dynamic rendering of the subset. Incidentally, if the subset itself is dynamic by its very nature, that's the same thing. You don't need to put the formula in, though, in that case. I guess the plus with having the MDX, though, is if you're not an admin, you can't make it a public subset. So this allows non-admins to create dynamic subsets without needing to be able to make it public. But we're going to use a subset. As soon as I select subset, it's going to automatically highlight my Choose Subset button. Select that. What it does is it gives me a list of every dimension within my application. Of course, you can do filters if you want to go to find a specific one. I'm going to scroll down and find GL account. When I select GL account, you're going to get a complete list of all of the public subsets within that particular dimension. So the list in question is Z print list. Okay. There you go. So I've assigned for vendor account, it is associated with the GL account Z print list subset. I'm going to save that. Now the next step is I'm going to now build the report. So I step into the reports dialog, and you notice there's a consistency in the look of each dialog. So it doesn't take very long to learn how to use this because it's very intuitively built and very consistent. Incidentally, something to keep in mind, we're keeping true to the nature of TM1. You know, in TM1, if we create a dimension and we use that dimension in a cube, the great thing about TM1 is we don't have to recreate that dimension if we want to use another cube. So the same applies here. You're going to see that we can borrow and reuse things that we've built in other objects. So parameters can be shared across multiple reports. I'm going to add a new report. This is going to be called my vendor report. Select my vendor report. And now I'm going to find that file that we just opened a moment ago. So I'm going to open my source path on my desktop, my ReportWorks folder, and there it is, main report with details. So I go ahead and open it up from in here. You'll see in the background, it's opening up that report. Over here, it's going to actually show me all of the sheets inside of that report that are available to me. I'm going to go ahead and select just the GL detail sheet. I use the expression to cherry pick. If you have a workbook with 10 sheets in it, you can be very selective and only select 1, 2, 3, 9 of the reports, or if you want a sheet or all of them. You're not required to deal with every single sheet or to extract a sheet out. You can actually take them directly from the existing workbook. So with this GL detail sheet, now I'm going to associate the parameter with the GL detail page. So I'm going to select Edit Parameter. It takes me back to my parameter window. I can then select vendor account, the one we just created. And you see here I have this little box for parameter location. So all I have to do is tell it, when you run through the Z print list of elements, of accounts, I want you to replace those at this location in this report. So we just put in the solid address. With that, I just hit save. The dialog box just reminds me that you're not finished yet. You still need to save your report screen. So remember, we toggled over to another screen. So I go, okay. It's just a reminder. It brings me back here. So there I have my vendor account now set up. Now, again, you can have multiple parameters. You're not restricted to only having one. So if I wanted to say run it across 5 accounts over 3 time periods, I can enter both parameters, what will happen is it'll be a by permutation, 5 by 2, we will create 10 separate sheets, but that's what we expect to see. The other thing we have in here, though, that's very useful is my worksheet name location. So what are the names on the sheet going to be? You'll see if I hover my mouse over that box, you get a helpful dialog box at the bottom that tells you exactly what it is expecting me to put in here. In this case, it's where's the reference that's going to tell them that we're going to put a value for the sheet. So for this case, I'm going to say, we'll just use the same location. We don't have to use the same location. It's basically going to put in the name of the account as the sheet name. We could actually have it point to another location on the workbook, maybe where I concatenate it, maybe use an alias to give it a friendlier name. So you don't have to necessarily use the same one again. The next one is ignore output location. If I hover my mouse over that, you'll see it tells you what this is about, but I'll give you a quick synopsis. What this does is it is going to allow me to, if I have a report, say, that's going to run across 1,000 elements, but only 600, or let's say 100 elements, but at any given point in time, only 50 of those elements will actually have data associated with it. So this will allow me to point to a location on the workbook that will it will eliminate it essentially from being used in the final report book. Because period over period, I don't know which 50 will have a value. This will at runtime decide whether there's a value worth running it across this particular element, in the parameter. We're going to leave this blank for now. I'll go ahead and hit save. And it's saved my report. Close that out. I can go ahead and close out of here too. You can save that, not a problem. Now, in the books, so we've created a report. Now I'm going to add a new book. The book is going to be called Vendor Book. When I select Vendor Book, you can see now I can go add a report, and there's my vendor report that I just created. So I'm going to select that and go OK. Again, it's just warning me that I haven't finished. I have to hit save. Again, I can have multiple books or multiple reports in any given book. You can also see over here I've got remove all formulas. That will take out all of my Excel and my TM1 formulas, or just remove TM1 formulas. I also have the option to say if I have an active form on this report to run that active form, or if I have an expansion, as we do in this case, to run that. So I'll turn off active form and leave on run expansion. And you would do this for each of the books that you're calling on, or each of the reports you're calling on. So you can add more reports if you wish. You know, go ahead and hit save on that. Okay, we're almost there. The jobs. So now we're in jobs. I'm going to go add. We're now going to call this vendor distribution. We'll call it vendor report distribution. All right. Now, vendor report distribution, again, just like in the previous dialog boxes, I'm going to be now adding my books to my jobs. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a job step. This first job step is going to be send to PDF. Okay, on that, we're going to double click on this job. So I'm going to take that report and I'm going to send it to a PDF file. Let me add vendor book. Okay, so it brings the vendor book in. Again, I can have multiple books in a given job. And now I'm going to say the destination is going to be, I'm going to send it to a file. That file is going to be in a PDF format. The destination is going to be to my reports folder, so on my C drive. In reality, it'll probably be somewhere on my network, and I'd use a network-friendly name. And I'm going to call this Vendors to Watch. Let's give it a dramatic name. Maybe that'll catch their attention. So I'll go ahead, hit save on that. This point down here, spawn files, just means that instead of creating them all into one book, you would create a separate book for each of the accounts that I'm going to run the report for. I'll leave that off for now. So I go OK. I hit save, and we're done. That's it. Let's see what we got. We go ahead. I'll run the job directly from here. So run selected job. Okay. So in the background, we're going to see it open up the GL detail report. It's running the expansions, and I think I have 4 accounts that's going to run it across. So we're going to wait and see what we get. And again, you wouldn't normally see this because this would be running on the server silently. But you wouldn't see the stuff in the background. You would see the job completed, though, for sure. So we'll close that. Okay, so I sent that to my reports folder. There it is, Vendors to Watch. Just got published. Let me open it up. Okay, so the first thing you're going to see is that I have a problem in here. I have 10 pages. The reason I have 10 pages is because I neglected to format that report. So this is something that this is again in the spirit of report work. We didn't see any reason why, when you're developing these, that you should always have to backtrack. I mean, at times you do have to backtrack when you build out a job, but a problem like this can easily be solved because it's actually running it off of that template that I have saved on my desktop. So to correct this issue and to reset the formatting, I'm just going to delete these out just so that we can see them, the new ones when they come in. To correct this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my report screen. I'm going to select vendor reports. Now I could navigate, if I wanted to, I could have navigated to that location on the network and found the template. But the easier way, I'm particularly lazy, is just to come in here and select open source workbook, and it'll actually go because it knows where on the network that report is. Close out of here. And so now I see the actual template that I was using. All I have to do now is apply my Excel skills. So I think I already have my print area created. So all I need to do is go into File, Print, make it landscape, and we're going to make it fit to one page. All right, and then it's going to save it back. That's all I have to do. I haven't touched anything else in report work. So back to my report work dialog. I'm going to go to Run Jobs instead because that just gives me a list of my jobs. There's my vendor report distribution. Go ahead and run the selected job. So again, it's going to run in the background. It's going to generate the PDF file. And we're going to have a chance to open up the PDF file and see what the end product looks like. All right, close out of that. Back to my reports folder. There it is. Let me open it up. Good news, 4 pages. And now you can see what it's generating. It's generating an individual page for each of the accounts, and that page has different numbers of vendors on it, depending on the particular account for this point in time. And this is the sort of thing that would have previously had to have been done one at a time by somebody in your accounting department or within one of your roles. And it would essentially be a waste of time. But instead, we can trigger it to occur automatically and to format itself automatically on the fly. Now, anytime we need this report, we just need to trigger it to start. Now, one of the things that we want to do, I've created this particular job. Now my boss comes back to me and says, well, that's great, Dominic, but nobody's ever going to look on that network location. Truth be told, none of us ever go there. I want these managers to see this report when it arrives in their inbox. So can you send it to their email, do email as well? So I don't have to go back and rebuild it from scratch. I can go actually directly to my job screen, go directly to vendor reports, and I can actually add it as a separate job step to the existing job. So everything else stays the same. Add job step. I'm going to say email the report. When I go into email the report, I'll select my vendor book. I will select that it's going to go to email. I'm going to say we're going to email it in Excel format. When I go into path, this is enter the file name for the email attachment. So we'll give it maybe a little different name. We'll call this vendors with activity, just to give it a different name instead of vendors to watch. That's going to be the name of the attachment. When I go into my distribution list, you get a dialog that allows me now to fill in to whom it's going to. It's going to be coming from me, and we can even edit the body of this particular email. So I will go ahead and put my email address in here. And James, if you're there, can you throw me your email address real quick, and I'll send it to you as well. If not, I can go and find your email.
James.wakefield@trident.com.au.
James. Okay, spell it out for me.
WAKEFIELD
Okay.
@TRIDANT. .com.au. .com.au.
Gotcha. We'll go in and I'll just change. Please review the attached and contact James if you have any questions. All right. And you can even, oh, by the way, down here, you can even set up a default value if you want just a default email to go out. So let's go ahead. I'm going to press OK on that. Press OK out of here. I'm going to hit Save. OK. Now, let's run this job. So the same steps. It's going to go through, it's going to generate that PDF file, it's going to go through the steps again, it's going to generate the XLS file, but then it's going to send out the emails. One email is going to come to my inbox here in New York, the other email is going to go to James's email box in Adelaide. Okay, so we're going to let it finish. It'll come back and tell us when the job is finished. All right. So I will let James, I'll let you pipe in when the email arrives for you, but let me take a look on my side. So first place I'm going to check is my ReportWorks folder. Hang on, my reports. There's my vendors to watch. It's just sent out right now. I go to my email inbox. There's my email. You can see there's James's name is on James's email, and there's our report with the XLS and the note that says to contact James if you have any questions.
Mine just came through.
Just came through. There you go. All right. So that is, in essence, how we build a job in ReportWork. In the last, I'm going to forgive me. Give me another 5 minutes, and let me show you now how we can trigger these reports to run without requiring the client on your computer. So right now, the only way you can trigger these jobs, you've seen me do it, is to run jobs, and I select it, and I hit run. What I've done actually in here is I've created, probably timed out on this, in WebWork, and by the way, you can do the exact same thing in TM1 Web, so you don't require WebWork to be able to do what you're about to see. But in my WebWork application, I created a web environment for my users to operate within. And in here, I have a reports drop-down and a ReportWork folder. When I select that, it just takes me to a very simple screen that allows me a little button that will give me a list of all the reports that I have available, all the jobs I have available to me. You see, look at this drop-down. There's my vendor report distribution that we just created. It also allows me, in this case, some of these reports I want to be dynamic and on demand. So in this case, my monthly regional update report, I want it to run across two parameters. One parameter is going to be, let's say, to go across the Canadians. It's going to generate an income statement, by the way. And I want it to run it for the month of February. When I go ahead and hit Run Report, what's actually happened here is it's create a TI process is run. So all I've done is trigger the TI process. It's going to do two steps. First thing it's going to do is it's going to update the monthly regional update report to use Canada. So it's going to update the subset, the parameter that the subset that it's pointing at, to include the two Canadian locations. It's going to run that report across February of 2013, and I say it's going to trigger the income statement. Just heard a chime. It's a good sign. There it is, February 13th monthly financials. And it even includes now an email that's not only going to me, it's going to our Toronto and our Montreal rep. I'm going to do it one more time. This time I'm going to say, instead, I want you to go for May. I want you to do this for Chicago, Minneapolis. And what I'm going to do is show you really quickly what it's actually doing in the background. So I'm going to hit Run Report. In the background, what it's actually doing, it also, by the way, generated one in my Excel file. I have a report request folder. This is something we would set up for you. It creates, my TI process creates a very simple QB file. A very simple QB file, like I said, it's also setting up my subsets and my report titles. But that very simple QB file will be picked up by a service that comes with ReportWork. And it's just monitoring this folder for exactly this, the QB file to flow in. When it sees that QB file, I'll show you an example of a QB file right here. And actually, it's already finished. All that QB file says is the name of the application we're running, the name of the person who's triggering it, that being me, and then the name of the job I want it to run. That's all it needs to do. So I'm using a TI process to do this, but anyone who's got any, in the audience who has programming skills knows that we can generate something as simple as a QB file using many different types of applications, not just TM1 applications. So now you can sort of see a tie-in with other applications that you would have in your suite that can trigger a TM1 report to be generated and distributed, as long as it's being built out in ReportWork. And sure enough, I come over here. There's my Chicago, Minneapolis report that got sent to Dominic Sharp, Chicago, and Minneapolis recipients. Go ahead and open it up. And you see there's my Minneapolis and my Chicago income statement. In this case, through May. So it actually expanded. I built an expansion into these. So it expanded out through May, year to date, and the period of May. And again, what made this possible is the fact that if I go back into TM1, blow this up so you can see my TM1 application, we've embedded all of the logic of report work in the control objects of your application. I go in my control objects, you see here, these are my report work objects. So I no longer have, once we set this up, it takes care of one big problem. How do we back up report work? How do we make sure we don't lose these jobs and reports and books that we've built out? Well, you back it up every night when you back up your TM1 data set. And if we drill into this, what you'll see is in this dimension, ReportWorks jobs, here's a list of all the jobs that are currently available. That's why when we created vendor report distribution, it automatically appeared in my list on the web, because on the web I use this subset, or actually this subset, to drive what you would see in that list. So again, automatic. I don't have to go and update that list. I have a dynamic subset. It'll automatically update onto the web for me. And then the last point is, if I jump in here, here are all of the criterion that I loaded into it. So to make the job tailor it, so it was only going to send it to Chicago and Minneapolis, and the distribution list was Chicago and Minneapolis, I just included that in my TI process that said, when you go to run, depending on the list of subsets, use that list, and as an attribute of each of these elements was the email address of the manager of those departments. So now we've gone a step beyond just bursting a report. We now have an intelligent bursting of the report that may even just send out specific notifications, for example, to our salespeople. Why have there been drop-offs in sales to customers X, Y, and Z in this last period? And then the next period, a different list of customers, or a different list of salespeople will be asked to look up a different list of customers who've shown some anomalous activity in the current numbers. We're no longer needing an individual to sit there and just crunch out these reports. The system can automatically crunch them out for us. And people will actually read the emails because they're not going to get emails that are not meant for them. They're only going to see the ones that they need to see. Okay. At this point, I'll be more than willing to entertain any questions.
There aren't any queued questions at the moment, but if anybody does have any questions, then feel free to raise your hand, which is the little icon that you'll see on the GoToMeeting area. Or maybe if you just want to type a question into the chat area, we can also take questions that way.